Hi, my name is Kevin McDonald, and I'm declaring my independence. Independence from what? Why, negative thoughts and energy, of course. Chief among them, hate, division, and fear. You see, I know that we're all one, and together we can solve any problem, save our planet and each other. Please, join me as we come together as one and choose a better way to be. So now, let's begin with my independence report. And welcome everyone to my Independence Report. I hope that you're having a wonderful day and things are going well for you. I just wanted to point out that in real time, there are 98 days to the election, so you need to make sure that you are planning to be there and to cast your vote, because this is going to be one of the most important elections of our lifetime. Okay, that's a political segment of the day, and I'd like to talk to a gentleman that we've talked to before. If you go to the podcast, he did a series about. We did a talk about Michael Newton and the Newton Institute and life between lives and his experience, and the book that he's written, which is 3.5 hours in heaven. I think that's. I don't have it exactly. Regan, is that what's the exact title?
The exact title is 3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven.
Ah, very nice. And it was a great time for us to talk, because Dr. Newton of the Newton Institute was a pioneer in the concepts of what happens to us not only after we die, but what happens life between lives, which is really unique, and not very many people have done that. So I highly encourage you to get Regan's book, as well as go to the Newton Institute and pick up Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. Having said that, you've got a whole list of things that I want to talk to you about. And the first one, First one is you've written a second book, and that book is called Reincarnation is Real. Tell us about that.
Well, it's an introductory book for people that have always kind of wondered about it a little bit, and I've kind of gathered a lot of the current research on what's going on. People don't realize that there's actually a lot of research being done into reincarnation, because the world is a little different now, so that since it's kind of out in the open, some people decided, like, well, let's see what can we do to research this to kind of prove it, you know. And so the book actually explains, what like I say, what the latest is going on, which is about a lot of it has to do with children that remember past lives. The people doing research on that figure, well, because when people experience a past life, if you're an adult, a lot of people will say, well, I bet you just, you were, what's the word? In other words, you
made
it up because you saw a TV show or you heard about it somewhere, and so your mind just made it up. Well, children, on the other hand, that are 2-3 years old, they've not been, not heard and had all this life experience that the rest of us have. So there's less chance of them making it up, or whatever. And when they've been able to go back and prove some of the things that the children said, and for instance, the University of Virginia, they're the ones that are forefront in doing the research on children who remember past lives. And they've had over 40 years now of research, and they have 2,500 cases in their files now. Or children, they've interviewed the children. The children have told them about who they were, where they lived, who they were married to, if it was that sort of thing, if they had children, whatever. And with the information given, they've been able to go back and actually find that person who they were, in a past life, because most of those were pretty recent, where even some people were still alive that were from their life before.
Wow.
So, once you get, half a dozen, your eyes start going, wow, maybe this is true. But my gosh, okay, now they have 2,500. Okay, that's, I don't know how many cases some people will need before they go, yeah, this must be real,
it's interesting, because when my youngest son was like 3 years old, and my wife was disciplining him, he looked at her and he said, now, when I was the mom, was like, what?
That's shocking. Yeah.
So it was really like, what? And but those things happen, and there are kids, and they can now go back. You're right. They have now gone back and they've verified some of these claims because these events and the event of these people's death actually happened.
Yeah. And because of the way Google is now and how easy it is to dig up things from the past, it's a lot easier today to verify things, to go back and do the research than it once was. So it's becoming easier and easier all the time. One thing children say sometimes, they'll say something like, "Mommy, when I was big," or they'll say, "Mom, before I was born," or that's what my daughter said when she was 3 years old, just out of the blue. My wife and I are in the bedroom, and she just comes up and she starts the sentences, and she says, "Mommy, before I was born," and then both of us just stopped and kind of looked at her and said, "What do you mean?" And she says, "Well, before I was born," and she said, "I was with Jesus, and I was looking down, and I picked you as my mom." That just, we didn't know what to say. Like, whoa,
Well, yeah.
So, kids have these little memories. And my granddaughter now told my daughter one morning, she was talking about her other brother and sister. And she said, "My other brother and sister." And, my daughter says to her, "You don't have any other brothers and sisters?" She says, "Yes, I do, Mom. And, my other brothers and sisters, So you have to listen to these little kids, and not dismiss it. If they say something like that, we'll just gently question them over time, and ask them a little more questions about that, and things come out,
Let's talk about the actual concept of reincarnation, because there are different ideas. As an example, in India, they don't kill cows and snakes because they're scared that might be Uncle Harry. But in reality, does that really happen that way, or are we as human beings with the human soul that we have, are we different, and so we kind of reincarnate back into what we are, and animals do the same thing, but on a kind of a different level for what they do?
Yeah, well, in the research that we've done, what's kind of come out is that we say generally a soul reincarnates upwards, and it doesn't usually revert. If you figure at the state of consciousness you are now, there's usually a continuing of a greater and greater and greater evolution as you move forward. But I have had and know of cases where people will talk about past lives, and they'll say, for some particular reason, they decided to incarnate into, even if it's just temporary, into some sort of animal or something. But it usually seems to be for some side, for some side reason, or some, like there's one gentleman found himself, he was temporarily in a pet store in the body of a dog, and it was only temporary, but he said it was horrible what he felt, because he was, how dogs just love people, and love all that. Well, in this pet store, every time the man would go home in the night, and he's in this cage, and the doors are shut, and he's there all by himself with no humans around, and it was just this feelings of abandonment, of loneliness. And then it was a short-lived experience, but when he was finished having that experience, he really understood. He really understood so much more about what it feels like to be abandoned. I don't know. He said it was just an experience that changed his life in a way, because he was given a different perspective on things. So we've had people that in the case histories where sometimes when they reincarnated, their life was I remember the one case because it was kind of shocked me where when you ask the person, well, where are you? And then you discover that this soul, this life was being missed. It was like when the earth was forming and it was being cooled, and a lot of souls agreed to go down to use their energy to cool the earth. And so the soul was, in a sense, the essence was in this mist that was cooling the earth. And in talking to her, she just was saying, it was a great life. I mean, she just thought there's something about the experience of being in this mist, which was just invigorating, and so that gave me a little bit different perspective on, like, wow, that's something else, when you realize that when we're in our true essence, we're energy, and that energy can be in anything, just like, our soul, we have this physical body, but that energy is able to embed in this human body. Well, it actually can embed in anything that it wants to for whatever, if it has to have a certain experience for something,
Oh, sure.
So it's, I don't know, the more that I do this, the more my eyes just get wider and wider, and I go, whoa, that is something else, but for most people, like in the book it's an ebook, and what's cool about the ebook is I can embed in there some videos, so that when they're reading the book, and we're talking about children who remember past lives, and then I have them click on a link, since they're reading this on their computer, and the link pulls up a little video about either a reporter reporting this or a research place talking about this, and they get to actually, see the child and see the little video. So I've kind of done people's research for them so they don't have to search all over the internet. So as they go along in the book, I think I have 6 or 8, and I forget now, different videos in there. But it helps people to start to understand what reincarnation is all about. So when you look at yourself as, when you say who you are, when you look at yourself as you are soul with a body instead of body with the soul, it changes things, it changes your perspective, and you realize that this body is just like a shirt that you're wearing, and when you're done with it, you just cast it aside and put on another one, then that's the first thing I think of people realize that, and start talking about themselves as this essence first, that we are soul and we've taken on this body, because we kind of grow up thinking that this body is the main, it takes precedence over the soul.
Oh yeah. And the soul oftentimes was just developed to be in this particular body, but that's really, the reverse is true. The soul picked the body because it had a use for that particular car. That's a metaphor that I use, which is it's like a car, and when the car's done running, you don't stop. It's like, have you ever had a dream? And I figured this out a little bit later in life, but I used to have dreams where I would be falling. And if I was falling and I got to the end, I expected, I would close my eyes and expect to hit and to be dead. and I would open my eyes and I now would be on the ground. I wouldn't be dead because you don't die. The essence of you remains alive. Now, the vehicle that you were driving is probably wrecked beyond recognition, but you're still there. And so that's why when you dream and you dream that you're falling, you never die because you don't.
Yeah. Well, what I feel in the research that I've done too is that feeling that almost everybody's had that feeling of falling or of flying. That where you have the feeling that you're
I love
flying
the flying
over buildings or think, oh man, I can't. Yeah, when that happens, I don't. Sometimes now, because I can control my dreams sometimes, and I realize I'm about to wake up, and I go, no, I don't want to wake up. I want to keep flying. It's just, it's so. I can see why some people want to hang glide or parachute or do something, because it's kind of that same feeling, of freedom, of like you're free as a bird in a sense, and I think that's the sensation people have when they're soul traveling, like when they're they're not quite conscious of, like they're half conscious that they're in their body and they're half conscious that they're somewhere else. I remember a few times when I've come back in my body from flying or something, and I feel like my whole body in the bed kind of jumps, like I have a crash landing or something back in my body.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's kind of invigorating,
So,
but
when people talk about reincarnation, and how do you talk to somebody who's not cynical but skeptical?
Well, when I look at the logic, even if you just do the logic of it, reincarnation there's a lot more logic to reincarnation than there is in our traditional way of thinking, because you just think about how long in this life, when we figure, when we want to learn to be a better people, like more patient or kind or have more compassion or anything. I mean, we go through one life and we barely make progress in just that one thing. Like even just to be patient, it can take a whole lifetime just, getting used to being patient. I kind of looked at it as like, I figured if I got into like doing computers or something, I mean, it would take a whole lifetime just to know everything there is to know just about a computer, or one thing. And I say, how can we learn everything about everything in just one short little lifetime? And so what reincarnation does is that it gives you a chance, like if you're going to college, say to start taking all the courses in college instead of just, English 101, I mean, there's also English 102 and 103 and 104. There's just so much to learn that there's no way that in just one lifetime that we can learn what we need to learn. And, when I was starting to believe in reincarnation, that's what started to make me think of the logic of it, and then, like, why are there so many religions? Why are there thousands of different ways of looking at God, and how can, one way of looking at it be the only way? That never made sense to me, even when I was a kid, when you start realizing reincarnation is real, it's exciting because you realize, wow, it's like looking at the college there and looking, at the university. To say you're flying over university and you realize how much knowledge is there, to learn. And instead of taking one little part of it, you get to experience the whole thing, So it kind of makes life exciting, and also it explains why bad things happen to good people. That's probably the biggest thing that some people say is, they're trying to realize, well, how come this little baby's born and the baby gets run over by a car or something when the baby's 2 years old or something? Like why, how does that make any sense? Well, I'll give you an example. I don't think I talked about this last time I talked to you, but there was a man I knew, and he had a 3-year-old little girl, and the little girl caught a bad cold, so he took her to the doctor. Well, the nurse at the hospital there put her on a wrong medication, and his daughter died in the hospital. It was a mistake by the nurse, and of course, he is like livid. I mean, he says he was a good man, very religious, very spiritual, but he says, Regan, I got to tell you, I wanted to kill that nurse, and she killed my little daughter, And so what he did, he just was praying and asking God, says, why did my daughter die? Well, that night in the dream state, his daughter came to him and said, Dad, I'm okay. I'm okay. I passed away, but that's what I came down to do. I had a contract with this person to balance out some things because I killed her by mistake in a past life. So the little 3-year-old, told the dad, don't be mad, Dad. I said that I was only supposed to be here for that time. And you were supposed to go through the experience of losing me because you had some things that you had to learn, So him having that experience, all happened in the dream state, it was real enough for him that he believed it was his daughter. And then he started being able to accept the fact that there was a reason for all this,
Well,
So,
I never could understand personally how you could believe in a concept where you were born, you lived your life as that person, and then you
mhm.
died, and then you went to heaven and spent the rest of eternity. I've got a couple of issues with that. The first one is the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Now, a billion years, just for those of you who aren't math wasn't your primary degree, a
That
billion
was me.
years is 1,000 million.
Wow.
Now, when you look at 1,000 million, now the dinosaurs were here 200 million years ago. That isn't even a little bit of time as far as the Earth being here.
Yeah.
So, if the Earth has been here 4.5 billion years, what would be the purpose for us to be here for 70 years, which is an extremely short amount of time?
Oh,
and
yeah.
and also you don't get to have all the experiences. As an example, it would be terrifying but interesting to be somebody that was lynched, or to be a black woman from Nairobi, or to be a gay
Yeah.
person, or to be, all of these different experiences of hate and division and fear. And I think that we're here to experience that so that we can understand it and rise above it. What's your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
That's what I believe too. It's funny because even these things we're saying, I mean, like somebody will say, that, we've heard the argument, well, there's, so many, if reincarnation is real, how come there keeps being more people on Earth than there was before, like, or, I'm trying to think of the argument they make about just, with the amount of people on Earth. But once you realize that, the Earth is just a drop of sand in the universe, as far as, I mean, we can't even imagine how many trillions and trillions or whatever's larger than that of essences or souls that there are, because people, what we found out in the research we're doing, when people are in trance, and I ask them, one of the questions I ask them, my clients, is when they're in trance, I say, have you ever lived and incarnated in any place besides the Earth, on another planet or another dimension? And it blows me away how many of them just immediately go, yes. They go, yes. And I says, well, can you take me to one of those places or explain to me? And wow, I mean, I find people talking about, had one gentleman, he's a doctor, and he was, oh my gosh, ever since I had him as a regular client, he was very hypnotizable, very, he would go deep into trance very, very quickly. And he said, when I asked him, he said, yes. And I asked him, tell me about the planet. And long story short, what we found out, this planet that he lived on had 50 years of light, and then it would be 50 years of dark. And he was actually a captain on a ship where they would go, because of the 50 years of dark, that caused problems with their planet where some of the resources they needed would be depleted. So they had to go out and to, explore other planets and things to bring back some of the stuff that their planet needed. and then he all of a sudden he's in trance or something, and he goes, fuck, oh my God. And I said, what happened? He says, that asshole co-pilot, we just crashed. And that's his co-pilot. It made some wrong thing and they crashed, and that's how he died in that life, on some other planet. So it's so interesting, and that's what makes it so real, because when people are in trance, sometimes they talk about these past lives, they become like Hollywood actors, because some of them embody that. They're like, when they actually experience themselves back in that body having those experiences. Some people choose to look at it like on a movie screen, so they're seeing it like, when I have them in trance, they're like looking at it as above, in a sense, like their consciousness looking down at what happened. And then, but the ones that are the most fun in my cases are when they're actually in the body. Like sometimes people start when they're a child, and this is a 60-year-old, and all of a sudden he's talking like a 3-year-old, and we've even had, I haven't had one myself yet, but some of the other therapists at the Newton Institute have had cases where a person will start speaking a foreign language, which in their life now they don't even know, like they don't know Chinese, but when they're there, they start talking in Chinese.
I've heard of that before.
And yeah, it's all over the board. I mean, we are just such a tiny bit of who we are. That we realize right now. There's so much more, and that's exciting. That's
well, that's the other thing is that when you start talking about the galaxy that we're in, the universe that the galaxy's in, and how many galaxies are in that universe, and it's inconceivable how many opportunities there are for growth that we have within just this one universe. And then when you start to think about the fact that there may be multiple universes in multiple dimensions, it can really twist your noodle, as it were.
It really twists your noodle, yeah. And sometimes I have to just go, okay, I just can't. I'm just not even going to try to wrap my mind around it because it's just too much. It's like my brain can't handle all of that there is. But here's the thing that I think that will relax people some is you figure the most important thing is what they're going through right now. In other words, they've chosen this life for certain things. So no matter how many lives they had before, how many thousands of experiences they've had and everything, right now they are in their body right now to learn certain things. And that's the thing that should be most important to them is what's on their plate right now rather than, what happened before. So,
there's some, go ahead.
Well, I'll just say all that they learn, just learning that you have lived before and everything gives you, that's one of the benefits of having a past life regression is you realize that, you lived and had other experiences before, and now you're in this life to have an experience. So instead of having your head in the clouds, let's get to it. Let's find out what you need to learn and what you need to experience in this life, because that's the class you're taking right now.
And there are some people who would say, all right, well, if you reincarnate, how come you don't remember your last reincarnation? And that is all by design. Because if you had something that happened to you in your last life and it involves somebody that you are with now and you're working out some karmic things, it's best not to remember that and how you were abused or whatever it was at that time, so that you could treat it from a brand new perspective and actually learn the lessons. Isn't that so?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit of a combination of both, but mostly, like when we've had people ask that question on the other side, when they do the life between lives, where they're actually in heaven and they're talking to a counsel or something, the perspective that they get is that they say that, once you're born, once you come out of the womb, it's like a wall goes up, and it's for some people it's thicker than others. For some advanced souls, the wall is a little thinner, so that they kind of have more of a connection to the other side. And for some people, it's 10 feet thick, between here and the other world. If you had to think of all the different traumas, all the different things you had, you'd be so scattered that you couldn't concentrate on your current life, So as it seems to be that as people progress and they become more spiritually aware, then the door between here and the other side opens a little more, so they can get more perspective on this life, some more. That's why with there's so many benefits to doing a past life regression, because it gives you a higher perspective, gives you more of an idea that you're an eternal soul, that you actually never do die. And so it kind of takes away the fear of death, which is, the biggest fear a lot of people have, besides public speaking.
Public speaking's number one, death is a close second.
That's what I hear.
By the way, we're talking with, I just want to get your information out. We're talking with Regan Forston, and he's written a couple of books. The first book you've written, the title again is
3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven.
And the second title is Reincarnation is Real, and that's an
Yeah.
ebook, and you can go and download that. And it's also got some links to some other videos. By the way, I wanted to ask you, was one of the videos that you did about a little kid um, who remembered being a pilot in World War II?
Oh, yeah, that's one a lot of people are aware of because Oprah Winfrey had the little guy on her show. I think it was very talked about. And there's in my book it's there's the story of that. There's the little video where the mom's talking about the mother and father actually in the video, talking about how they were unbelievers, but their son was so insistent, and he kept drawing pictures of airplanes, and he even called it a Corsair. Which how does a little 3-year-old know that that's the name of one of the planes from World War II? And eventually in there he was able to go to a reunion of some of the men that were survivors in his group from World War II. And the little boy, when he's at this reunion, and here these guys are in their 80s and 90s, and the little boy was shocked. He goes, "Oh, they're old. They're so old, Mommy." Because in his mind he was picturing them like they were in the 40s, 1940s, and here they are in the 1990s or 2000s. I forget when that happened, but yeah, it was pretty much proof. He was actually, I believe, I get a couple of these mixed up, but I think they took him to his home where he said that he grew up, and he was able to point out even things in the bedroom and stuff, what his bedroom looked like at that time and things, and talk about his other relatives and stuff. So, yeah, there's one video. I don't have it because I couldn't find it again when I was doing my book, but it's out there on the internet somewhere because other people have even told me about it. And it's about this woman who always believed that she had other children and that she was from Ireland. And later in life, she did a past life regression. They were able to identify the city where she was. So they did further research, and they actually went to that city. She was able to point out the house that she grew up in. She remembered the names of her children. And then they went through records, and she was actually able to find 3 of her children that were still alive. And they were like late, like in their 80s or 90s. She met with them, and her 3 children at first being skeptical, but after talking to her and her being able to tell them all about their early lives of things that they remembered, they all, after some time, say, "Yeah, this is my mom reincarnated." So that's kind of crazy, isn't it?
That's amazing. I got to ask you.
Yeah.
I got to ask you, when we're talking about reincarnation, there are some that would say that your time between lives can be as long as 30, 40, 50, 100, 200, 500 years. And there are other times when it's very quick. Is there, in your frame of reference, a reason why some return quicker than others?
Yeah, I was really curious about that too. So the research we're doing at the Newton Institute, when we find out and ask those questions, when you get to the other side, depending on how evolved you are, the choices that you have for being, like I say, a co-worker with God, with this essence of this loving essence of whatever it is, becomes greater and greater. So when some people are over there, they decide not even to come back again. In other words, they evolve to a certain point, but they'll go and they will, maybe advance to becoming a guide or a teacher or something like that. And sometimes they'll just want to do some training, and you say, or have some classes or something in heaven, because there's ongoing learning on all different levels. Even in heaven, you don't just stop learning. There's always something more. So it's kind of all over the board, where some people go, "Man, I got to get right back in another body, because I need to do this." So they'll be back immediately sometimes. So it's kind of all over the board, but there is generally speaking, people come back, I would say under, 50 years or sooner. A lot of them now say that they're coming back, like every 10 years, 15 years, something like that. For some reason, some of them are coming back quicker this time. Don't know exactly why. It might be because everything's so sped up right now with learning and the way the earth is and stuff, that they want to come back. So it's kind of all over the place, because when some people get up there, they've taken, in other words, you go, okay, God, where do you need me? And he'll go, well, you're evolved enough. Why don't you help out over here? Or why don't you do this or that? So it's again, it's, and the more we do this research, the more vast everything is. It's like there's just eternity. There's no end to anything. It's like I say, it's hard to put your mind around it sometimes, especially the fact on the other side, there's no time and space. So it's not so hard now for me to understand it, although it's still kind of mind-boggling of the possibilities. But like when I have someone in trance and they go in a past life, we can go forward or backward in that life in an instant. They can go back and have their memories as a child. They can go forward to when they're old and when they passed away. And it makes it very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk a little bit about Regan the man, because here's I'm just going to throw out your bio a little bit just so that people know who we're talking to. First of all, you do handwriting analysis, and that takes a lot of time to learn how to do. You've worked in Hollywood. You are in the Screen Actors Guild, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know what that means and the reverence that you should hold for somebody that's actually in the Screen Actors Guild, let me explain how this works as I understand it. And Regan, you correct me if I'm wrong. But in order to get into the Screen Actors Guild, you have to have a union speaking part in a play, movie, commercial. Now, in order to have a speaking part in a play, commercial, or movie, you have to be in the Screen Actors Guild. So it's a catch-22. You can't get in there until you've been there. Is that right? Yeah.
It's I got mine in a roundabout way. When I was in Hollywood, you have to have, gosh, it's funny now. I kind of forget exactly, but I know I had to have three times where I got a union part in a movie without being in the union. And the way that happens is you're on set and all of a sudden somebody who's union doesn't show up and they need somebody really quick, or they need extra, say, I got 2 of my 3 things that I needed from working on a National Treasure 2, the movie National Treasure 2 with Nicolas Cage.
Sure.
And so I was in the makeup room and they were making me up as in the beginning of National Treasure 2. It shows a scene in a bar in the 1800s when Booth, the guy who shot Lincoln, was coming through this bar. And they were making a plan with some other guys in the back room of insurgency, And so they made me up. It was really cool. I spent like an hour and a half in makeup every day, and they made me, put this beard, and we were wearing clothes just like they had back then. And this bar scene, I tell you, when it was full of about 40 people, and I actually felt like it was 1800s. It was so realistic with everything, all the clothes, all the furniture, everything was like it was in the 1800s, So it was kind of really cool just to even do that. Well, on one of the days, some of the people that were union didn't show up, so they came to me and said, "You're working union today." And I went, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I went, "Cool," So not only is the food better because instead of having hot dogs and hamburgers, you get steak, with your union. Whatever. So the food at lunch and everything was better. But so 2 days they had me, and they said, well, tomorrow you're working union too because we don't have enough union people. So the other one that I got was on a TV show, and I can't even remember the name of it because you do some of these things. You just show up and you do it, and you're there, and you don't even know what the show is. Sometimes you just you come in, and it's part of a production. And they only need you for an hour or 2, and then you leave. But maybe that production goes on for months. You don't. So some of these things you just go in and get paid. And I had to be. It's because I was a stilt walker in my my clowning years. It was a stilt walker, and they needed a stilt walker. And I go, yeah, I could do that. And so I just walked through this one scene that they had in this thing, but I got paid union wages. So once I had those 3 things, and that took me. I guess I was about a year in Hollywood doing all kinds of things before I got my 3 vouchers, I think they call it. And then I was able to join the union, which I did, and it was expensive. It was, at the time, it was like $3,500 in Hollywood or something.
Wow.
So, but it felt good. It felt like a band, like something I'd achieved, when I got that. But there's also a double-edged sword when you get your union card. And here's the thing people don't realize. When you get union, you can only do union jobs. So you can't do, that's 90% of the work down there's non-union, that you don't get paid, and about 10% is union.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So my agent, like I said, well, I want to get some parts like on a CSI show or something, where I'm one of the suspects, where I get to have some line, maybe 5 lines or something, where I can tell them that I'm not the murderer or something like this. And my agent says, I don't think I'm even going to submit you for those, because she said there's about 2,000 people of your, that are just like me with the same statistics and everything, that are trying to get that one little 5-line part. She said it's like winning the lottery just to get a 5-line, thing. So it's kind of a double-edged thing. But where the money was, though, is in doing commercials. And in Hollywood, that's really, for an actor, if they're going to make it, you got to audition for and get some commercials, because if they're union, those still pay really, 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 really good, So, and the thing that I liked, I did a thing for National Geographic, where I was Reverend Rainsford. It was a real man who, it was called the Stories of the Party Like the Rich and Famous, or something like that was the name, but they still show it on History Channel every once in a while, because I keep getting residual checks. That's what's nice about that, is you do one time and then you get paid over and over and over again if they show it multiple times, So
was that the show that Robin Leach was on?
No,
I'm Robin Leach.
Yeah, that one. No, this was Party Like the Rich and Famous. I'm trying to think. It was about in the 1800s, when all, when the Industrial Revolution was happening, all these people, there's so many people that became like, millionaires or billionaires at the time. And they just, money was like nothing. I mean, so they would have a party like in New York City, and they would spend like $40 million on a weekend party, having all their rich friends come, and just everything was just totally extravagant. Well, Reverend Rainsford, at the time, a lot of these rich people went to his church. And I forget it was New York City or Washington or something. It was all where like the Rockefellers and his people go to the church. And he was incensed that they would waste that kind of money and just throw it away when there was homeless that needed to be fed, and there was, mothers that needed to be taken care of. So when they were in church, he was reading them the riot act, and that was me in that thing there. And he was pissed. How dare he waste his money? We need to build a new thing for the church here so we can take care of the poor. And here they are blowing $40 million on champagne and caviar and all this stuff that they're doing, just throwing money away. You know how
I can tell that you were a real actor is that real actors always say of the parts that they play, they do it in the third person. They don't say, I was in the show and this is what we did or I did. This is like, This is what my character did and his name was, that kind of thing. I had to ask you also, because we're going to run out of time. You've got so much to talk about. But I was talking with my sister the other day, and they were talking about a reality show. And the reality show, the basis of it is that a single person is dropped into the wilderness. And then how long can that single person survive before they give up and stuff? And my sister was saying, well, they're excuse me. They're by themselves and they're not. I said, then who took the pictures? They're not by themselves. It's the whole production crew that's doing this thing. That's right?
That's true. Exactly true. People don't realize that they're not going to die out there, or they got the camera crew behind there having steak and stuff every night, and they're out there eating bugs,
Well, that's what she said was this one guy only made it at 6 hours because they dropped him into an area that there were a lot of black bear, and it's like, maybe so, but they're not going to put. I have yet to see a news report of on Survivor the camera crew got eaten by a snake,
Yes,
or alligator or something.
Well, in my book, The 3 Hours, 33 Minutes in Heaven, I talk about my time in Hollywood, and I did two reality shows, and it was a wake up call for me. I did one on enough years have passed now. I don't think I get anybody in trouble, but there was a show on A&E, and it was called Spying on Myself. And one of the segments was I had the whole segment was my segment, and this is about. When we went in for the audition, we had to have a good story of somebody who betrayed us in our life or something that we still had issues with. And the story I gave is when I had a talent agency for a while. When I was an actor, I had an agency where I booked entertainment for corporations like, bands and DJs and hypnotists and all the kinds of things like that. And it helped me get a lot of corporate gigs as a comedian and a fake motivational speaker when I did that. But what happened was I had a secretary that came in one day, and she says, "Regan, I quit." She says, "I met a guy on the internet. I'm moving to Florida, and I'm taking the PetSmart account with me." At the time, I was doing all the grand openings for PetSmarts nationwide with all of their entertainment, and that was about $30,000-$40,000 a year I'd make on commissions on all that. And she just stole the account, and so it cost me. There was 3 more years of my contract. Probably cost me $120,000. So, needless to say, I had a family. I had 4 children to feed and a mortgage to pay. And here goes $100,000 that someone just stole from me. Well, anyway, they thought that was a good story. So the idea of spying on myself was they wanted to find her and lure her into a place for an audition for a job, and then I would be sitting at the table with her disguised so that she wouldn't recognize me. And that during the conversation of getting the job, we'd ask about her prior employment, and we'd find out about her boss, what used to be me, and she would talk about me while I'm sitting there not knowing it was me. Now, that's a crazy reality show, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, they took me to Brad Pitt's voice coach, and they taught me how to talk like I was from Georgia. So I had to change my accent. They actually made a false set of teeth for me and a new hair. They even shaved all the hair off my arms and stuff because I'm kind of a hairy guy, and they didn't want anything to look like me, And I swear, when I looked at myself afterwards, I went, "Who the heck is that guy?" And it was actually me, So here's the thing that I tried to find my secretary and I couldn't. So they called me and said, "Well, we like your story still and everything." So they took me in with the producer and my agent, and they said, "Okay, nobody has to know about this except me and the producer. But you couldn't find her, but we like your story, so we found an actress that's going to play that part of your secretary." I went, "Okay, this is how it works, huh?" So anyway, we did the show. All the crew, everybody, we had her we met at a restaurant, and she sat at this table, and she was interviewing for a job like my company, which was working for a talent agency, And so this actress that, bless her heart, was across from me. I mean, she was so good, and and I had a bug in my ear. So because in this restaurant, we took over this Mexican restaurant, and everybody in the restaurant was extras in it. So the only one that was with my secretary coming in, which was supposed to be my real secretary, was not supposed to know that. Well, everybody in the restaurant thought she was my real secretary, and everybody in the production crew, except for the head guy and my agent, were the ones that knew that this was it wasn't real. So, but it was perfect because this, in my ear, I have a microphone in my ear, so the producer behind is telling me what questions to ask her, and then tells when it's time for me to take off my disguise, and so I did that, and she was shocked that it was me, and she cried, and she apologized for what she did, and so it made me look good, but that's when I realized that, these reality shows they're somewhat real, but they're somewhat scripted, and they're not. You can't always believe it. Like, Hollywood is Hollywood. It's just they create this illusion of realness that's not really there. So.
Well, I was struck when I started thinking about this, because there's this one that's out there that's Naked and Afraid. Are you familiar with that one?
What's it called?
It's called Naked and Afraid.
I've only seen as I've been going through the channels, and part of me just goes, they're not that afraid.
What I was thinking was, okay, you've got these two people, one male, one female, and they're both naked, and they're supposed to be in the woods by themselves. And if there's just the two of you, but there are 20 people that are around that are making sure that everything's okay and stuff. So it's like, you must have to really be confident in your physicalness to be hanging around naked in front of all those people for all that time.
Yeah. You got to be. Well, yeah. It's actually, I went to a nudist colony once. It was on my bucket list. I got to do that one time. And I met a woman I dated for a while. She owned part of the nudist colonies in Oklahoma, and I was actually performing there at their state fair. I had like 2 weeks there where I was performing, doing my show there, and I'd met her, and she took me there, and wow, what a letdown that was. It was nothing like I thought it was going to be. But after a while, like, if you had clothes on, you're going to feel really out of place, for one thing, because everybody's naked. But
so what kind of performance did you do with the nudist colony? I'd be curious to know.
Actually, I was just an observer today with this woman that took me there. So, but the only thing I remember is we're having a barbecue dinner night. So here's everybody sitting butt naked on all these, picnic tables running around. I mean, there's kids running around, people and everything, but all body types, people into their 80s, I mean, it was totally not sexual at all. I mean, in my mind, you wonder, wow, totally the opposite of that. It was just, and I kind of got to understand what it was. It was like an expression of freedom or something, I don't know. It was just that one time.
That's why God invented clothes.
Yeah. So we didn't have to look at each other's bodies,
Exactly, because they're not all they're cracked up to be. And most of the time, there are a few, but those only last for so long, and then they join the rest of the unwashed.
Oh, back to the reality thing. The other thing that gave me another perspective was I was on Master Chef 5, and there was I think 5,000 people. They went around to different cities around the country, and people auditioned for Master Chef 5, and I think they had 5,000 of us. They auditioned, and then I was one of the 100. They whittle it down to 100 that they start the show with, and they know how to create drama that's real, but they create it by the way they treat you. Like when I walked onto set, we were not set, but where they were keeping us sequestered. It was a hotel in downtown LA. And when you walk in, the first thing they do is they take away your laptop, they take away your phone, they assign you with a partner into a room. They lock the door to your hotel suite, so you can't even go out of it unless you call and have someone escort you somewhere. So right off the bat, they take away all of your stuff, because they don't, and you're locked in this room with someone who you don't even know at first. So luckily I had the guy that I roomed with was really cool, and his dish was python. He was cooking python, and he got actually kicked off the show just before I did. In there.
So is it true that pythons taste like chicken?
No, it tastes it. He tried cooking it. He said 20 different ways, and there was no way they could get it. When the judges tasted it, they just wanted to vomit, So it was like, you're out of here, So, but actually, he was 2 before me. The guy that got kicked off just before me was a guy that had a monkey that helped him cook. He was on the show on MasterChef 5. So they were trying to make that show, give it a little different flavor. So how I got the job is because I was a ventriloquist and who liked to cook, and that they found that interesting. So it took a whole year to get even on the show. I mean, 3 months would go by and they'd say, okay, you made it to the next level. And they would interview you to see if you're good on camera, and of course they had to like the food that you cooked too. And I was really good at cooking. Like I knew like 2 or 3 dishes that were really cool that I cooked that got me on the show. But then I couldn't compete with these people that were actually really, really into cooking, So what was funny was when Gordon Ramsay, I made a dish. It was linguine with I made like a butter sauce with it with asparagus and shrimp, and I plated it where I made the asparagus like a tic-tac-toe board, and I put the shrimp in the little tic-tac or in the what am I saying? Not tic-tac. What is it when you play
checkers?
Yeah, it's kind of like we go. You put an X here, another person puts an O.
Yeah, that's tic-tac-toe.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of TikTok now.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I'm thinking, wait a minute, something there. But anyway, so, but the thing that I got kicked off for, but I thought was cool is I made a fresh cranberry sauce out of fresh cranberries. And just like, instead of having wine, it was like just to have as you could have it to cleanse the palate. And 2 of the judges tasted it. And then Ramsay went, cranberry sauce with pasta? Like, oh my God, he wouldn't even taste it, So he knew I was a ventriloquist, and they had me have one of my puppets there, Harvey. He's a talking dog, and they said, you have him with you? And I go, yeah. And he says, let me see him. So I've never let anybody hold my puppet before, but here I am on national TV, so I got to do it. So I take him out of his case, and then Ramsay puts Harvey on his lap and puts his hand in his head, on the puppet, and he goes, you're out of here with my puppet, So I was not, I got kicked off the show, but they wanted it to be a little theatrical. So I actually got kicked off the show by my own little dog, puppet. So
ventriloquism is an art form that is in some manner and ways has gone by the wayside, but it's coming back. There are some really good ones like Terry Vader. I mean, he's in Vegas, and he does it's a great. And the little girl that was on America's Got Talent,
yes,
and she was just phenomenal as well. Darcy, that's right.
Darcy, yeah.
She's
fantastic. Yeah.
How do you do ventriloquism? How did you learn it?
Well, it's funny. We're talking about this spiritual stuff. I had a dream that I had back in 1978 or 79. And I woke up, I never had thought about being a ventriloquist or even a comedian or anything, even though I was kind of like the class clown in school, I would always, I remember in high school that I couldn't help but say something if the teacher said something stupid, and I would just blurt out something and everybody would laugh. And the teacher would laugh too, so it kept me from getting in trouble from going to the office, for whatever. But I don't know why I couldn't help myself, but that's all, I never thought about being a comedian or anything. Well, I had a dream, and in the dream, it was so real. And I woke up, I sat up in bed, and I went, ventriloquism. And I found myself the next day at the library, which was like, I never go to the library, looking up ventriloquism. And I found they had a National Association of Ventriloquists in Colorado. And so I called them up, and they said, hey, we have this ventriloquist course, and it's correspondence course. And I went, what? How? Correspondence course on ventriloquism? That even sounds weird. But I took this course, and it's the best one that they have on ventriloquism. I don't even know if they still have the association, because this was back in, like 1979. They still may have it. But anyway, it was this course to take, and they teach you, they just send you like 3 little pages at a time. And over a period of a year, what you learn to do is to retrain your tongue. In other words, people don't even realize how they speak, but when you're talking, like when I'm talking right now, my tongue is all over the place in my mouth. It's depending on what sounds I'm making. It's either my tongue is pushing the air up through my nose or through my mouth, or a combination of both, depending on the placement of the tongue. So what they teach you to do is to make the same sounds differently than you normally do. So when you're doing like W, it's hard to say W without moving your lips. Like if you say what, it's hard. Like people listening right now, they'll go what, and your top and your bottom lip move. Well, what they do is they teach you to say double O, like somehow in your mind, this plays a trick on your mind, but it's like what, like what are you doing, instead of what. It's like you use a couple of different letters that you say, and you're able to kind of roll those, and you don't move your lips. It's tricky, and like with the B's and P's, there's tricks with your mind that you think of a different, like let's see, gosh, it's been so long now once I learned it. But anyway, over a period of a year, you retrain your tongue to push air in a different way, so that you can make the same sounds or sounds that sound the same, and without moving your lips. So
how do you do M? M, I've tried it and I cannot figure out how to do M.
Let's see, I'm gonna try right now. Hello, another. Oh yeah.
Oh, see, there you go.
Hello, another. Well, you can't see if I'm moving my lips or not, but I can tell that. Yeah, M's actually were pretty. M's and N's were not that difficult. It was the P's and B's that were harder.
Yeah,
and I have it in the person who actually explained it the best. Oh man, in my old age here, I'm forgetting his name now, but he's my favorite one. He lives in Hollywood here, and Jeff Dunham.
Oh sure.
Oh my God, he just cracks me up. He is just so talented because he has so many characters and they're so well defined.
I'll kill you.
Yeah, I'll kill you. Right, that's what I like. I'll kill you. The terrorist.
The terrorist. Yeah.
I went to a book signing that he had in Hollywood, and he signed my book for me. And in there, he tells in one of the chapters, and I'd have to look it up here, but next time I talk to you, I'll tell you how to do the B's and P's. I just kind of forget because I learned it 1980,
Well,
and then
been a while.
It's been a while, yeah. But I had a ball doing that. I mean, I had this niche that I had doing corporate roasts, where I'd get like $5,000 a show to go into a company for like a 45-minute show, and they'd fly me in, put me in a hotel, give me a rental car. I'd do this hour show and get paid $5,000 and walk away. And I loved it. It was so much fun. But I used the premise of Andy Friendly's a little boy dummy I have, real cute little guy. And they would say, okay, we have a special guest tonight. And it's two people. It's Regan and our newest hiree, Andy Friendly. And he's going to come out and tell what it's like to work for our company, his impression of the company in the first few months that he's been employed. So then, of course, I walk on stage with the dummy, and of course, everybody laughs like, okay, we got this dummy working for the company, And but the premise was, at one point I'd say, well, Andy, I don't understand. This is a big company here. This is like, I know when I was in Pennsylvania, I did one for Hershey's,
That's a big company.
And I said, yeah. I said, how come I don't understand how they'd hire a dummy. Well, it slips out that he got the job because he's the illegitimate son of one of the VPs, So all of a sudden they're seeing this dummy up there, and the way people's minds work is like creating this illusion, and they can just see this little dummy, and they know the vice president guy. So they're seeing him as the son. So, of course, because Andy's the illegitimate son of one of the VPs, everybody's kissing up to this little dummy, during the day. So girls want to go out with them. So, I would have the company send me a list of the people, and I would ask them questions about the people, like, okay, who's the most outgoing of your group? Who's the one, least likely to want to be mentioned or something like that? Who's the ladies' man of your group? Who's the go-getter? Who's the really, their best salesman or something, and had a whole list of questionnaire, and they would fill out. So I would really feel like I knew the most important people in the company, or the people that everybody liked there, So one time I did something for Comcast. I was doing their convention, and Harvey, my little talking dog, made fun of this one guy, and this guy stood up and he got out into the middle of the thing. He started arguing with my dog, and I was lucky at that time because my ad libs, this guy kept going on and on and on, and every time Harvey, my little dog, would one up him, and it got to be so hilarious that 3 years later I get an email from a lady from Comcast, and she says, "Regan, I was in the lunchroom today, and people were still laughing about this guy and what happened 3 years ago at our convention, and I said, well, thanks for letting me know. That made me feel good, So it was really fun times, But,
well, it's I got to tell you, because we're going to run out of time here in a minute.
Okay.
But the thing is that over the course of your lifetime, we haven't even gotten into the handwriting analysis and some of the other stuff that you've done, but you are going to appear on Martha Norwalk's show, and I'm going to host it. It's Positive Talk on the last Sunday of the month.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, and this is going to be August 30th of 2020. So if you're listening to this podcast before that, then you can go to KKNW 1150 AM from 9 to noon Pacific on that Sunday. And we're going to talk with Regan the entire 3 hours. And we're going to retouch on the life between lives and reincarnation. And then we have to get into, we haven't even talked about sexual harassment in Hollywood, which is a big issue now. And we've got lots to, I'm sure that you have lots to say about that, as well as your time in Mexico.
Yeah, and my crazy time in Mexico. And also, too, if we have time on your show, let's talk about EFT a little bit, because...
that's a big one.
Oh, that's huge. I'll... and like I told you before, maybe we'll talk more about my client whose son shot him in the head. And remember I told you about that one, and he was, needless to say, have some trauma from that. And in one session with using EFT, this psychological acupuncture, he went from in a scale from 1 to 10, he was a 27. He was just crazy about this, and that's why he was doing drugs and everything, because he couldn't deal with this thing with his son shooting him in the head,
Oh, sure.
And we did this EFT, this tapping, and on the second session, the first session he went from a 27 down to a 4, in his mind, and then on the next session he got down to 0. I'll tell you, that was the best feeling that I had, because now he's not carrying this crazy energy around it. He can still remember the incident. Of course, you don't forget the incident, but EFT takes away the unwanted extra energy or craziness that's with it, and it just gets rid of it, and it doesn't come back. So people realize, and like I say, about half of my clients on my regular hypnotherapy practice are women that have rape and incest and violence issues that they've had in their life that shut them down. And for the most part, with the majority of them, I'm able to get them to, back to normal within, a few months, instead of years and years and years like it used to take.
Absolutely.
So we got 3 hours. We can hit on a lot of stuff. It'll be good. And so your listeners now, there's just a lot of good things, and especially too. And my website, Visit the Afterlife. Anybody listening out there, check out visittheafterlife.com. And there's some videos on there of people going through past life regression. There's a video on there of a young lady going through a life between life session where she goes from a past life and then goes to heaven and comes back. And they can kind of see what that's like in real time, so.
Well, if you, so your website again is?
Visittheafterlife.com.
And you can talk to him about EFT. You can schedule a life between lives session. You can do a past life regression. If you want to quit smoking, he does hypnotherapy, and he can help you quit smoking too.
Yeah. And actually, most of this can be done on Skype or, I go all over California. I still travel. 500 miles to see a client if I'm doing the life between lives thing. But for regular therapy and everything, even the tapping and stuff can be done very effectively with Zoom or Skype. So,
well, it's a pleasure having you on the podcast, young man, and we're going to look forward to
Kevin.
the 30th. But now, before you go,
Okay.
I want, as I generally do, is there anything special that you would like to tell in the accumulation of everything that you've done in your life? And it's quite a bit, actually. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience as far as what you've learned over the, I don't know how many years you've got, but you've done a lot in the years you've had. So give us a little bit of idea of what.
Okay. Well, as I kind of mentioned before, the thing that most people need to do is to realize that their lives and the difficulties and things that they have in their life are chances for growth. They're not supposed to be meant as like, woe is me, or like, God is punishing you. Even if you have to go through some karma where you're evening out the score for something bad you did before, it's all about, evening things out and everything. So if people look at things as difficulties as chances for growth rather than as punishments, like poor me. In other words, try to get people to stop being in the victim mode, but to look at it the other way and realize there's a reason and purpose for everything. But the other thing that I like to say is kindness is love with work boots on. And for people to realize that what we're down here basically to learn is how to be kind. Even the Dalai Lama, when you ask him, he said, what's your religion? And he said, kindness, And I think if people just go, yeah, you know what, I should just be kind of kind today. When I was in the afterlife, and one of the things they told me to do to keep myself balanced in this life to make it easy was to do random acts of kindness. And it didn't matter if I was picking up a piece of trash that wasn't mine or smiling at someone that needed to have a smile for the day. All those little things help us become better people. So that's what I would end with.
I appreciate it. We've been talking with Regan again, and he is, what's your website again, Mr. Forston?
Okay, it's visittheafterlife.com. And the book, which is available most online bookstores, but Amazon's the one I know it's on for sure, is 3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven, and Reincarnation is Real. They're both up there on Amazon for sure.
Again, we've been talking with Regan Forston, and so find him at www.visittheafterlife.com. And I would just like to challenge everybody that is listening to this podcast. Your job today, ladies and gentlemen, is to smile at somebody randomly, because it may be the only smile they see all day long. And
make their day.
It can make a difference for them, and it can make a difference in your life. And because you are the one who can make the change. Hey, and thanks for listening to this episode all the way to the end. Hey, pretty cool. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can receive regular updates and new posts. And remember, take care of each other, because each other's all we've got. See you next time on My Independence Report.